from some of the retrieved UFOs that humans on Earth got their hands on have aided and assisted some of your technological breakthroughs over time with the aid and assistance of interactions with certain extraterrestrials and a few of your scientists. We are not going to go into specifics about that at this time.
Okay. Humans have a history of mixing genes with other species and civilizations. For instance, DNA testing revealed that my mother has 2% Neanderthal ancestry. Given this history of genetics mixing, my question is twofold. First, is it true that the Pleiadians are known for being exceptionally good-looking? Second, if so, are the Greys and hybrid aware that after open contact, the 6th and 7th hybrid races might include significant percentage of Pleiadian DNA if they mingle with humans?
There will be some mixing of Pleiadian DNA. There will be some mixing of hybrid DNA. This is all we will say at this time. Look to your understanding of Willa Hilla Chrissing to have a better idea of what we're saying.
Is she a mix?
Yes, of course she is.
With what?
Human and hybrid. And many other things.
You've been mentioning the Mantis beings more frequently.
Yes.
You describe them as being very wise and as the overseers of the Greys being in the hybridization program. I'd love to learn more about their background and evolution as a species. Could you share which planet or system they originate from? What does it say on their interstellar alliance ID cards?
They originate from a dimension that is very similar in vibration to the angelic realm. They do not originate from a planet.
Do they actually look like praying mantises, and do they have any connection with the insect on Earth?
They do have a strong resemblance to the idea of the praying mantis insect. We will go into the idea of the connections that may exist between them and the praying mantises on your planet at another time in another transmission.
Did gray beings develop technology to travel to a parallel universe, our Earth, on their own, or using help from another race? If so, what race was it, and in exchange for what?
Again, they were aided and assisted by the mantis beings and a few others to have the technology to tunnel into parallel realities. Again, the idea was to make sure that they did not die out. It is of vast importance that certain experiences for the soul continue to develop, to afford opportunities for soul growth in the cosmos. This takes on awareness and knowledge of a whole different level of understanding of how the soul chooses to have experiences in physical incarnations in order for its forward momentum, its expansion, and its growth. There are programs that exist, so to speak, aided and assisted by highly advanced beings that provide many different forms of opportunities in physical incarnational realities for souls to grow. It is important that these do not die out. Therefore, it was perpetuated for the good of all, for the greater good of the soul's growth within existence.
Can you please elaborate upon the holographic device that you've spoken of regarding unveiling of humanity's true history? How would individuals access this device? Would there be multiple devices, etc.?
Yes, there can be multiple devices. Some of them will take on different appearances. Some of them will be spherical, almost like you're looking into a crystal ball. Some of them will sort of be tablet-like, and be semi-transparent, where images will appear either over them or within them.
So you mentioned that this first contact event from 2025, 2026, so is being pushed to 2028, 2029. So referring to that one, this person says, I was wondering what would happen if the government, in their infinite lack of judgment, were to attack these ships.
Nothing would happen because any attack can be repelled easily.
How do your people address the problem of scarcity or scarce resources? Here, our economists have concluded that capitalism is the best method for allocating scarce resources, but this method seems very problematic in its current stages.
Why would you assume that we have a scarcity of resources? We can travel the stars. There is an abundance of just about anything out here. There is no scarcity. This is one of the reasons why it's so important for Earth to become a member of the galactic community, so that you can understand that there is an abundance of everything for all. There is no scarcity. That's an illusion that you have created on Earth.
There are some other individuals on social media that claim to channel Bashar. Can you clear this up for us, please?
As we have often said, this channel, known as Daryl, is the only outlet through which we will come. In the past, there have been a few that we have aided and assisted to get used to the idea of channeling other entities that they have made agreements with. But at this time, and for many, many years, this channel has been the only one through which we will come. No one else channels me as an individual. There are others who may channel different members of my society, but no one else channels my identity.
Do you and the Sasani people have facial expressions? For example, when you communicate telepathically and say something funny, do you physically smile or are you expressionless?
Of course, we have facial expressions. We often laugh.
I had an encounter with grays in September 2024. I remember stepping outside into my front yard. There were gray, shadowy figures in my front yard and at my front door, and I knew they were grays, so gray ETs. I was lifted up into the air on board the ship. I was approached by a gray being. In response to her approach, I spontaneously generated a strong, large, high vibrational energy field. She smiled and kissed me on the cheek. If grays have no emotions, why did she smile and greet me with a kiss? Why did I generate such a powerful energy field? I've never done anything like this in daily life on Earth.
First of all, again, this is a hybridized gray, something closer to hybrid beings, and they have emotionality. As we have said, you cannot just simply lump the grays into one thing. There are many factions, and many have been hybridized and developed in certain ways. The idea is that exposure to her allowed you to feel your own true energy field on a higher frequency level. This delighted her, and that's why she kissed you, because you responded in a way that showed her that you were ready to accept that level of vibrational power in your own energy, that you were ready to be more of yourself. Therefore, she rewarded you with the kiss.
It's beautiful. Can you share more about the Greys' current and recent activities and interactions with us? Are they still abducting people since we are so close to open contact?
Again, remember that there are different things going on in those encounters. The idea is that very often people are brought up aboard the ships to interact with the hybrid children, to teach them about the idea of living on Earth. So there are many different reasons why people may still be being brought on board the ships.
I would like to know the purpose of taking children on a spaceship. My husband was taken as a child many times, and he's very angry about it.
He is very angry because he was never given the tools to understand that it was his decision as a spirit to participate in the hybridization agenda. The children can relate to the hybrid children a little bit more easily. He is just angry about it because he felt out of control because he wasn't properly prepared. So he can get over that if he is willing to understand that he made an important choice to be of service in the hybridization program. And he can ask for those encounters to happen on his own terms. Now,
I'm excited about the prospect of open contact, but a part of me doesn't want to get too excited because I know I will be disappointed if it doesn't come to fruition. How can I balance my excitement with acceptance for whatever comes to pass?
if you are interested at all in following the formula, you will remember that one of the steps is having no insistence or assumption about anything, just letting it play out. So remember, it's not absolutely vital in general that a society has to have open contact with extraterrestrial beings. So the idea is let it play out. The most important thing is that you live your life in the way that you need to, in a way that is exciting for you, in a way that is true for you. If anything is going to lead to open contact, it will be that. But it doesn't have to lead to open contact for you to live an exciting and passionate and creative life. So don't insist on that idea as being more important than you living your own life. That's the most important thing. Open contact will occur in those realities where it is important for it to occur, where it is relevant for it to occur. We are telling you that it's relevant for your reality, but again, that shouldn't sway you from simply following your passion for its own sake. Remember, regardless of what you think it's going to get you. So when you drop your insistence that it has to lead to something in particular, like open contact, then there will be no disappointment because you will simply have lived a life that feels fulfilled, that feels creative, that feels loving, that feels passionate. And that's the most important thing.
But isn't contact inevitable within the next 5 years, like you mentioned?
Yes. As I said, this is what is relevant for your society. I'm simply saying it doesn't have to be a condition for you to live a life of passion and joy. Don't make it so. Don't rely on us for you to live a life of passion and joy. That's what we're saying.
In a previous transmission, you mentioned that the COVID vaccine was not harmful. Many people have either died or suffered serious side effects following the shots, both immediately following them and weeks, months, years later. Could you please explain why you made this statement? Could genetics, soul contracts, or belief systems affect how the vaccines affected us?
First of all we said is that the COVID vaccine is basically generally relatively safe. And that still holds to be true. The idea of millions of people being negatively affected by it is erroneous data. Your data is skewed. There have been some side effects. Some of it has to do with, yes, what you said, pre-existing conditions, life path choices, genetic malfunctions, so on and so forth. But the idea of the percentage of individuals in your society who actually experience negative effects from the vaccine are relatively rare. So you have false information that millions of people were harmed by it. The statistic is more along the line of less than 5 people per 100,000 that were affected negatively by the vaccine for one reason or another, because of the choices on their life path, because of their pre-existing conditions, so on and so forth. it still holds true that the vaccine is generally, relatively speaking, safe for most people. But it's up to you to decide what is true for you. Nevertheless, your data is skewed.
Thank you. We have some historical questions.
And as we have said, they were sort of under what you would call a time crunch. Therefore, they needed assistance. They would never on their own have been able to extract enough of the material to aid and assist their world in time, had they not had that assistance.
And were they successful in saving their planet?
To some degree, yes. But again, remember that what they did in creating Homo sapiens was against their laws. So the idea is that then, once Homo sapiens existed, the Anunnaki that had recalled those groups back home then had to guide, had to watch over. They still continued to extract some gold, but did it in a way that simply added to what they had already collected. They used it in positive ways for the balancing of the atmosphere of their planet, but nevertheless were also consigned to figuring out other ways in which that could be done, so they did not take advantage any further, any longer, of the creation of Homo sapiens in a negative way.
And what eventually happened to their planet? Is it still around?
It's still around, but it exists in a different dimension, and it is more connected to the star system you know as Cygnus.
And what do they call it, the planet?
Are you asking for the Anunnaki's own language for their own world?
Yes.
Ashea.
Thank you. Many people use the biblical book of Revelation to point to events happening in the future, which they think is now. Others say the book was referencing Rome at that time. Are there really any truly prophetic verses in the Bible that corresponds to events happening now?
Yes, some of them. We're not going to go into detail about that. It serves no relevant purpose at this time.
Researchers at the Pyramid of Giza discovered what they call the Pyramid Inch stone, which they have extrapolated along with corridors of the pyramid to be a timeline of the future corresponding to major world events. The timeline appears to end in 2033. Is there any validity to this, and does it coordinate with open contact occurring in this window?
Yes, it does, because everything changes after that point. As we said, open contact will occur most likely within the next 5 years, and the changes that will result from that will start to really impact the direction of humanity from that point forward. So basically, your 5 years leads up to 2030, and then 3 years after that, you will see a massive directional shift in humanity between 2033 and 2050 that will reset the direction of humanity for its future evolution. So yes, it's generally accurate in terms of when humanity changes direction and shifts its frequency in a new direction that will help it merge with the galactic family. It will be in the future remembered as an important shifting year, 2033, an important year of shift, an important direction change, what you call a sea change.
33 is also an important number. Is that correct?
Yes. And this is why we operate in the idea of threes, because creation and existence is a trinity. Therefore, vibrationally speaking, the double 33 is a very powerful transformational gate that you are going to walk through.
In 1566, there was a UFO phenomenon over the city of Basel, Switzerland. Many discs appeared to be flying over for a day. This sighting reappeared 3 weeks later. It was recorded by many people in the local newspapers. What was that? Is that city a vortex for UFOs?
It is, but what they experienced was a wave from one parallel reality to your parallel reality of another wave of the grays coming through.
I read a book by Ramtha where he mentions events that are supposed to happen to our planet. He spoke about the fall of the world as we currently know it. Many things I learned from him resonate with me, but the idea of societal collapse does not. You have often spoken about the fact that we create our own reality. Does this mean that the idea of the collapse doesn't does this mean that if the idea of the collapse doesn't resonate with me, it won't happen? Also, could you share some information you might have about Ramtha?
We will share nothing about Ramtha because we do not endorse or deny any source of information. But the idea of the collapse is simply that you are using a negative definitional word. We have already talked quite extensively about the idea that your entire society is about to be reset and restructured, especially with regard to open contact. So you can look at that as the dissolution of your old society, a collapse, if you will, but a reinvention, a restructuring of the idea. And you are part of that. So you'll be around for it, but you don't have to see it as a negative collapse. See it as a restructuring, a redirecting, a reinventing.
My 5-year-old autistic son recently came to me with a piece of paper. He had written Orpek on the paper. He told me that this is his spirit name. He is only 5, and we do not really discuss these things. He asked me what my spirit name is, and I didn't know what to tell him. Why did my son do this? What is the
Because
spirit
children are
name?
still strongly connected to spirit, especially up to the ages of 7 and 10 even. They still know their connection to spirit. They still can communicate with spirits. So it's natural for a child to remember themselves as a spirit, as a soul, and can transfer a lot of information about the spirit realm to those in physical reality. So pay attention.
Can you explain the concept of time in a way the physical human mind can understand? What is time, and what role does it serve?
Well, as we said, time is a side effect of your consciousness shifting through multiple parallel realities billions of times per second. The idea of time is so that you can experience the process of creation. It's like saying, in a timeless state, I'm going to tell you a story. So here's the story from a timeless perspective. Once upon a time, and they lived happily ever after. What happened to the middle of the story? What happened to how did we get from once upon a time to happily ever after? What was the process? What was the adventure? What was the experience? What were the lessons? How did it grow? How did it change? What was the path? So, time exists within the soul, a certain focus of the soul, to experience the process, to experience the story unfolding so that you can discover yourself from a new point of view. That's how creation expands. As we have said, the structure of existence never changes. What changes constantly, what expands creation, is your relationship to it, your perspective of it, your experience of it. And that's what time is for, to allow existence to continue to expand infinitely so that you can discover yourself from a new point of view, which allows existence and all that is to experience itself from a new point of view, constantly, constantly, constantly experiencing itself, changing, expanding, growing, learning, being new. But the structure never changes. It is what it is. Existence is what it is. The experience of existence only happens with the idea of time. Otherwise, there's no experience. Things just are.
Is it possible to become too dependent on our permission slips, such as with crystals? I had something happen and I reached into my pocket to hold on to the crystals, and I realized I'd forgotten to put them in there and started to freak out, thinking I needed the crystals to keep me in the positive, even though deep down I know it's not true.
Well, if deep down you know it's not true, then you know that the answer to your question is yes, of course. Anything can become an addiction from the negative side. The idea of anything you use as a permission slip is to teach you that the power is coming from you. It's just that you happen to be using a particular device that aligns with your belief system to allow yourself to be more of who you are. So, yes, if you rely on it more than you need to, then yes, it can become a crutch. It can become an addiction. So the fact that you panicked when you realized you didn't have it might be a good indication that you need to start allowing yourself to wean yourself from that so that you can understand more clearly that you're the one that has the power and that the permission slip is just allowing you to be more aware of that. It's not coming from the permission slip, it's coming from you.
And this next person says, my contact crystal broke. Is that a symbolic representation of something? I still feel my heartbeat when I do the meditation on it.
Yes, in that sense, it doesn't really mean that much. The idea of the contact crystal breaking can be slightly a permission slip recognition that the idea of open contact has been slightly postponed. But that's all. Don't worry about it.
Can you tell us why it's been postponed?
I already did, didn't I?
I
Your
suppose.
reactions to the comments that were made act as a barometer that tell us whether you are or not ready for contact. So there is still a little more work to do. There is still a little more clarification to be had. And this is why we encourage all of you to start talking to one another, regardless of your belief system. Do that work, and the nature of open contact will become more positive. Refuse to do the work, stay sequestered in your differences and divisiveness. Open contact will take on a different flavor and a different color. It will still happen, but you may prefer the version of open contact that is more representative of coming together than being divisive. That's all we will say about that.
This person says they saw Wicked last night, the movie, and it was a thrilling experience. Why is the story of the Wizard of Oz and its iterations so significant in our culture?
Well, again, what we've been talking about, the idea of two different points of view that can come together or that can be flung apart. Which will it be? So use your magical selves, be the wizards that bring the two sides together so that the land of Oz, your world, can live in peace and harmony and respect instead of being so divisive. The splitting prism doesn't mean that you have to experience the idea of divisiveness. It simply means that you will experience whatever is relevant for you. It's not a contradiction or a mutually exclusive state of affairs to the idea of harmony and peace on your world. So create a new reality. You can shift. You're still splitting to new realities. You're still moving, still shifting through different parallel versions of Earth. But you can certainly do that with more togetherness than divisiveness. We would love to welcome all of you. Not that we have to, but we would love to welcome all of you and introduce all of you to your galactic family. But you're the ones in charge. Remember, fear and negativity are not conducive to open contact. That's all we will say. And we are not pointing fingers at any one side. You both have an abundance of fear and negativity. Let it go. Talk to one another. Support each other. Explore each other. Find the deeper issues in each other that you can all agree on. Recognize in each other's character what is representative of a willingness to be a true person and what is representative of being something out of alignment. So, discern, but work together to do so. Again, there's a lot happening you are unaware of on many different levels. Come together, find out what that is, make a declaration of true independence. Move forward together. The time is close approaching for the introduction of the oracle. Are you done with your questions for the moment?
Yes, that is the end of our questions. Is there anything else you would like to add?
We will now add and allow and facilitate what the oracle will say. Once again, we remind you, before the oracle speaks, the two most important things that we have shared with all of you at this time on your planet to move you toward contact in a positive, creative, peaceful, harmonious way is to remember that it's not about what happens, it's about what you do with what happens that makes the difference, and to stay in a positive state no matter what manifests so that you can get a benefit from it. Remember those two things along with what the oracle now has to say. Again, we encourage you, since the oracle will repeat this 3 times in its transmission, to write it down so there is no misunderstanding. And again, I remind you, we completely leave it up to you to understand, to divine the meaning and the mystery and the interpretation of what the oracle will say. We will not help you with this. This is left in your hands. But use it creatively. Come from your heart. Come from your soul. Everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. We will now allow the facilitation of the oracle, who will repeat the transmission 3 times. The dark night of the soul calls forth the light within. And when the light of truth comes forth, the blind shall see once again. The dark night of the soul calls forth the light within. And when the light of truth comes forth, the blind shall see once again. The dark night of the soul calls forth the light within. And once the light of truth comes forth, the blind shall see once again. This is a being from the Interstellar Alliance Council. Again, it translates in your language simply as the Oracle. This was an oracular transmission. There may be more in the future as we get closer to the idea of open contact. We will leave it to you to ponder the mysteries inherent within the oracular transmission. We will thank you at this time for allowing this transmission to occur. Our deep appreciation to all of you. Our unconditional love to all of you. Take heart. Be at peace. Continue to breathe. Relax into the remainder of the transmission. Just breathe. Just breathe. Just breathe.
Day to you this day of your time. How are you? Good. Allow us to begin this interaction in the following way by, first of all, once again, thanking each and every one of you individually and collectively for co-creating with us this interaction. We thank you for being willing to be ambassadors of your civilization and for allowing me to be an ambassador of mine in our representation of the Association of Worlds, of which one day we perceive you will eventually partake. We thank you for co-creating these interactions to allow us to experience the gift of your unique presentation of consciousness, so that we may also learn from you that many more ways that the infinite creation has of expressing itself within the overall existence. Before we begin with sharing, we would like to discuss a certain concept we have to some degree already discussed with many of you, the idea that your locale, which you call the Santa Fe area, has a certain kind of frequency that is somewhat different from many of the other electromagnetic vortices points upon your planet. The Santa Fe area has vibrations that are connected to similar vibrations on many other worlds. So you could say, in effect, that there are Santa Fe's on other planets. Not, of course, that as appears on your planet, but that the vibrational frequency is the same. And so, because of the law of vibration in like attracts like, you will find that the frequency of your Santa Fe area, being similar to the frequency of other Santa Fe areas on other planets, allows you to be connected to those areas in energy and in the correct state to access information from all those other areas that overlap in vibratory frequency, thus making your Santa Fe area a very active center of knowledge and information, which will only grow in the years to come. Now, beyond this concept, we would also like to discuss something which we have never really talked about before, and it may also be the entitlement of this particular recording, and we will call it electromagnetic geography. Now, this may be a mouthful if you wish to say it that way, but we will explain it as quite simple. The idea is simply that certain areas, physiologically speaking, will be representative of certain concentrations of the electromagnetic energy, what you typically call the electromagnetic field, but are far more than that. But what we refer to as the electromagnetic field, same thing, electromagnetic energy. This field is concentrated in certain ways within the grid of your planet and creates certain effects by these concentrations. This is really a relatively simple concept, but it may be something you have never looked at in quite this way. Imagine, if you will, that you have a flat piece of ground. Imagine, if you will, a literal grid of lines upon the ground, lines that go this way, lines that go that way, similar to the grids that appear on your drawn maps. Now, imagine that you allow the ground in a certain area to rise or to sink, and in your imagination, picture the distortion of the grid as it does so. Picture the lines bending to accommodate the idea of the rising and sinking of forms. And notice that as it does so, these lines begin to intersect and bunch up in certain ways that represents concentrations of energy. So the idea behind this is to recognize that what you call physical, material geography is really nothing more than electromagnetic fields forming into certain concentrations, alignments, and arrangements that are represented in your physical reality by rises and falls of what you call the landmass, or the physical material of which your planet is made. But there is something else in this to consider. For think about the sensitivity that many individuals on your planet have had over thousands of years of where it is, the kinds of places they choose to go to meditate and be in touch with the universe. You typically ascribe the idea of meditation to such places generally, as mountaintops. But why should this be so? There are many other places, of course, that are representative of good meditation points, but generally the idea of the mountaintop is that, electromagnetically speaking, it is literally a concentrated apex of electromagnetic energy. So by being there in that particular warp or distortion of the electromagnetic field, where it rises to a peak, the electromagnetic energy is concentrated there, and as it connects into all other electromagnetic energy, it allows for clearer reception and transmission of the electromagnetic pulses that are representative of your physical form, your physical body. It is like standing directly in the path of a transformer, or a current, or a carrier line, or a carrier wave of concentrated electromagnetic fluid, so that you are transmitting more powerfully, so that you are amplified more powerfully by the distortions themselves in your geography, in your electromagnetic geography. So when you feel drawn to certain places on your planet, it is no accident. As you change your vibrations, there will be representative points in the electromagnetic field on your planet that will be conducive to magnetizing you, to lure you to those locations, so that you will be in sync, as you say, in harmonious synchronization with the electromagnetic field, so that you will be afforded a greater degree of manifestation of your thoughts into physical materiality. In this way, it is similar to the concept also of gravity, because gravity is really nothing more than certain kinds of concentrations and distortions of a larger and slightly different vibrational electromagnetic fluid field. Thus, you will find that gravity is not really the concept of a property of matter per se. It is a property of the distortion within the field itself, which you represent as matter. Now, some of your scientists have already realized this for quite some time, but there are also little bits of differences to this connotation as we are meaning it. The idea to recognize is that gravity is simply literally the attraction of like vibrations to like vibrations. It is not the idea literally of atomic interaction or gravitonic interaction, as some of your scientists are theorizing. It is like vibration to like vibration based on the overall distortions and frequencies that crop up in the electromagnetic fields. Matter is really nothing more, in a sense, than a spiral of that electromagnetic energy, a whirlpool of energy, in a sense. Atoms, as you call them, are really empty spaces, but it is their motion, their spin, in a sense, their cyclical motion that allows them to interact with each other in certain ways, and very often what you call two particles are actually simply different ends of a cyclical motion, or a tube of energy spinning. In this way you have the matter and the antimatter universes. For on one side you see the spin go one way, but on the other side you see it go the other way. And that would what would be called the antimatter universe. The reason that matter and antimatter cancel each other out is because you know, if you watch in any kind of experiment by setting up whirlpools in water, that if they're spinning the opposite ways and they collide, they will simply cancel each other out and turn back into the flat electromagnetic energy that they originated from. That is what matter is. Spinning vortices. Spinning vortices. And these vortices build up and reinforce each other to create larger vortices and larger vortices. And these will have their certain vibratory patterns and will attract the smaller vortices to them to add to the overall momentum. So they use you, in a sense, to add to their momentum, and you can use them to add to your momentum and become one with the electromagnetic whirlpool and amplify yourself in that way. We have said also, in this sense, therefore, that your Santa Fe area is a very strong bubble, a very strong vortex of a very particular vibration, as we have just said, that is associated and affiliated with vibrations on other worlds. Distance, time, they mean nothing within the heart of the vortex. For again, remember, your concepts of space and time are really only felt primarily at full strength within the flatter portions of the electromagnetic grid. Within the whirlpool distortions, time and space become meaningless. And as you stay within the center of yourself, and as you are attracted to flow into the center of the vortex, or into the separate bubble realities we sometimes refer to them as, you will begin to sense a quality of timelessness, an eternal nowness, a suspension of time, a magical feeling, sometimes you call it. A spacelessness, where certain things can seem to happen that take no time, occupy no space, or occupy everywhere, or all time. It is basically the same effect. These bubble areas are concentrating on your planet now, becoming stronger and stronger and stronger because you are aligning your energy by exploring and examining these concepts of your consciousness. You are adding to the overall momentum of the ability of your planet to become totally aligned in that way through the linkage, through the network, through the web of these vortices. Every thought you have, every belief, every emotion changes the eddies and the currents of the ocean of this electromagnetic fluid. You are immersed in this ocean. In fact, you are made of it. For you yourselves are nothing more than concentrations of that fluid, physiologically speaking. Your consciousness itself originated this fluid and crystallized out of it your physical representational selves. You are made of yourselves in that sense. Self-supporting, self-reinforcing, self-perpetuating, self-accelerating. You are homogeneous, and any differentiation you experience is because of the particular patterns of vibrations you impose upon that fluid and the crystallizations that result therefrom. But if you understand that you are doing this, and you understand that the differences are your creation, you can dissolve those differences and have immediate impact over many things that heretofore may have seemed like remote occurrences or remote objects, because it is all made of you. It is all extensions floating within the sea of electromagnetic fluid that is the physical version of your consciousness. Once again, remember, we remind you, your consciousness is not in your body. Your body is in your consciousness. You are dreaming yourself as physical reality. You can dream whatever dream within that dream you wish. We thank you for allowing us to remind you of this in return for the gift of your sharing. We ask you now, in what way may our civilizations be of service to you? You may begin with sharing.
Good evening.